In this lesson, I'm going to look at basic text input fields for single and multiple line input. I'll also explain the various options you can select in the Property Inspector, most of which apply to all input elements. I've got a blank HTML page. I'm going to insert a form, so I've got the Insert panel open with the Form category selected. Form is right at the top. Click that. Then the next item down is Text. That inserts a single line text input element. The first thing you need to change for any input element is its name, which is used to identify the data when the form is submitted, and the name must have no spaces. So in the name field down here, select text field, that's the generic name given by Dreamweaver, and change it to something more appropriate. When I press Tab to enter that, it changes the name attribute in the input element, also its ID, gives it the same value. Not only that, it changes the value of the For attribute in the label, so it associates this particular label with this input element. Of course, you will also change the placeholder text in the label, but I'm going to concentrate on what's in the Property Inspector. When you mouse over most of the labels, you get a tooltip explaining what the field is for. Size sets the width in characters. This is a rather old attribute. It's not very well supported by browsers. It's generally much better to use the width property in CSS to set the width of a text input field. Max length is much more useful, and it's supported by all browsers. It allows you to set the maximum number of characters allowed in that field. Value is rarely set for an input element. It just sets the initial value. If you add title, it gives you a tooltip in the browser to describe the element. Again, that's not used very much with form elements. This next one, placeholder, is a hint that describes the expected value. This is new in HTML5. Let's see how it works. Let's just put something in here that inserts the placeholder attribute inside the input element. And if I turn on Live View, you'll see that it's displayed grayed out. So it's a hint telling people what type of input is expected in that particular field. In some browsers, when you click into the field, the hint disappears. In Live View and in some other browsers, it stays until you start typing. So let's exit Live View and continue our exploration of the Property Inspector. At the bottom left is a series of checkboxes. Most of them are self-explanatory. The first one, disabled, disables the field. Autofocus automatically puts the focus in the field when the page is loaded. Obviously, you can set this on one field only in a page. Required, this is new to HTML5, and if you set this in a browser that understands the required attribute, it will refuse to submit the form if the field is empty. Read only makes the field read only, and autocomplete allows you to control whether a particular field automatically completes. You can set this on the form tag for the whole form or on individual input elements. It works in a rather strange way in Dreamweaver. If you select it, it adds autocomplete equals on, which happens to be the default value. Autocompletion is always on in a browser that supports autocompletion. To turn off autocompletion, you need first to select it and then deselect it, and then you've got autocomplete equals off. The next option, form, allows you to associate the input element with a particular form. This is new to HTML5, which allows you to put input elements outside of a form. It's not supported by older browsers, so I'm going to pass on that. The next option is pattern. This expects a regular expression that the element's value will be checked against when the form is submitted. Regular expressions are quite complicated. It's a programming language, and if you want to learn more about it, I suggest you do a search on the internet for regular expression tutorials. In fact, there's one of mine that you can find on the Adobe website in the Dreamweaver Developer Center. And then finally, there is list. This allows you to associate an input field with a data list element, something again which is new to HTML5, and I'll cover that in a separate lesson. Most of these options in the Property Inspector apply to all form elements, so it's useful to know what they're for. Now let's just quickly look at a couple of other input fields. I'm going to add a new paragraph, and in the new paragraph select password, and this inserts a password field. In older versions of Dreamweaver you needed to convert an ordinary text input field into a password field by selecting a radio button. You no longer do that. There is a separate way of inserting a password field. And just to demonstrate what a password field does, let's go back into Live View, and if I start typing in here, instead of seeing the characters that I'm typing, all you get is a bunch of dots. This doesn't actually encrypt what is being input. All it does is it prevents somebody looking over the user's shoulder to see what is being typed into the field. And then let's go out of Live View. I'll add another paragraph. And for multiple line input, you need to use a text area, and that's way down here, text area. If you click that, Dreamweaver inserts a text area element. This has a couple of different options which I need to explain. Here we've got rows and cols. Rows sets the number of visible lines in the text area, and cols sets the width. It's a rather old-fashioned way of doing it. The more modern way to do it is to use CSS to set the width and the height of the text area. Something which is new in HTML5, not yet supported by all browsers, but definitely worthwhile using, is max length. This sets the maximum number of characters that can be inserted into a text area. In the past it only applied to text fields, now it can apply to text areas as well. And the other new option is wrap. If we open that, we've got two options in there, soft and hard. If you select hard, when the form is submitted, a hard line return is inserted after a specific number of characters, but for that to work you must also set the cols field. If you select soft, or leave it at the default, when the form is submitted no extra lines are added, only those that are added by the user. So for single line text input, use a text field, for a password use a password field, and for multiple line text input use a text area. Many of the options in the Property Inspector are new to HTML5, so they're not supported by all browsers, but you can use them safely. If a browser doesn't recognize an option, it simply ignores it.